So the Indiana Fever have got their enforcer. They have got their enforcer for Caitlin Clark. And I'm not gonna lie, like, when it comes to Caitlin Clark and their enforcer, last year everyone was talking about the median enforcer.
Caitlin Clark spent last season enduring relentless, cheap shots, aggressive fouls, and defenders trying to bully her out of the game. But those days are officially over. The Indiana Fever have fortified their roster with not one, not two, but 3 enforcers who won't stand for any of that nonsense anymore. The Fever have locked in their enforcers for Caitlin Clark, and let's be honest, when it comes to protecting Clark, this was long overdue. Last season, everyone was talking about how the team needed an enforcer, and now they've got 3. Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, and DeWanna Bonner.
The closest thing they had was Erica Wheeler. That was the closest thing they had for someone to defend Caitlin Clark, was Erica freaking Wheeler. Maybe Tammy, but Caitlin Clark was getting hit a lot. She was getting hit a lot early, and they needed their Charles Oakley.
These 3 veteran stars bring a tough, physical edge and aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. If Clark's critics thought they could keep targeting her with hard fouls and cheap shots, they're in for a rude awakening. The message is crystal clear. If you come for Clark, you'll have to face them first. The closest thing the Fever had to an enforcer last season was Erica Wheeler. Maybe Temi Fagbenley helped at times, but Clark took way too many hits. It was obvious she needed her own version of Charles Oakley. This move isn't just about stacking talent, it's about making a statement. The Fever aren't just here to compete, they're here to dominate. With these new additions, they've built a team that can play fast, play tough, and most importantly, protect their star player. Clark's adversaries have officially been put on notice.
Sometimes you need one of those players on your team. You need one of those enforcers. Every good player, by the way. Every good player, every good team that is a super duper star. Most of the time have enforcer type play.
So how exactly will these 3 game changers transform the Fever into one of the most formidable teams in the WNBA? Let's break it down. Every great team has an enforcer, someone willing to do the dirty work, set the tone, and make sure no one messes with their superstar. Caitlin Clark, the most electrifying rookie the WNBA has seen in years, stepped onto the court for her debut season with immense expectations. Fans were eager to see her light up the league, but instead of a warm welcome, she was met with hard fouls, unnecessary contact, and a level of physicality that went beyond normal competition. What was happening? Women's basketball has fought so hard to earn respect, yet Clark's treatment on the court looked more like schoolyard antics than...
That's all I see. They try so long to get respect for women's basketball, and then they treat it like a junior high school girl's locker room. Junior high school girl antics on the court.
Professional sports. This wasn't just rookie hazing. Clark was being singled out. The numbers prove it. A staggering 177% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA last season were committed against her. That's not just tough defense. That's targeted aggression. Now, think about young girls watching this. How does the WNBA expect to grow when it allows its brightest stars to be targeted like this? If the league wants to be taken seriously, it has to start acting like it. And one team in particular took things too far, the Chicago Sky. An unbelievable 80% of those flagrant fouls came from one team alone. That's no coincidence. They weren't just defending her, they were sending a message. But why?
I think we went up really strong a lot of times and we didn't get a lot of calls. And going back and looking at the film, I've seen a lot of calls that weren't made. I guess some people got a special...
Was it intimidation, frustration, or an old-school attempt to knock a rising star down a peg? Whatever the reason, it was clear that Clark's presence made some players uncomfortable. One of the worst examples came courtesy of Angel Reese. Imagine Clark driving to the basket, eyes locked on her target when suddenly, bam, Reese sends, her crashing to the floor. The entire arena went silent. Would she get up? The hit was so brutal that even commentators questioned whether it had gone too far. But Clark? She's built differently. She dusted herself off, got back to her feet, and kept playing like nothing happened. That's what separates Clark from the rest. Her composure under pressure.
Now, what little girl wants to grow up and play in a league where you're targeted like that? How do you sit here and profess and demand that everyone take women's sports seriously when you can't even take it seriously enough to not act like a junior high queen on the court? It's stupid. That's so dumb. It looks like a soap opera.
While everyone debated whether the hits were excessive, she remained focused. Even after taking a blatant cheap shot from Kennedy Carter, Clark's response was simple. That's just not a basketball play, but you have to play through it. No complaints, no retaliation, just the kind of mental toughness that builds legends. But the Fever's front office knew they couldn't let Clark go through another season unprotected, so they made major moves. With the addition of some serious enforcers, Indiana is making sure that no one gets away with bullying Clark anymore.
Caitlin Clark was getting hit a lot. She was getting hit a lot early, and they needed their Charles Oakley. You've got that in Sophie Cunningham.
Let's start with Natasha Howard. Her arrival marks a massive turning point for the Fever. She's a 3-time WNBA champion, a former Defensive Player of the Year, an All-Star, and a veteran with over 300 games under her belt. Howard isn't just another player. She's the enforcer this team desperately needed. The moment she stepped into that locker room, the message was clear. Caitlin Clark is no longer an easy target.
Sophie Cunningham, in general, is just wild. Wild is the best word I can use to describe Sophie Cunningham. And, like, it's carnage. Like, it's carnage a lot of the time when Sophie Cunningham gets involved with anything. The amount of fights that Sophie Cunningham has been involved in is...
Howard's presence alone shifts the balance of power. Standing alongside Clark, she instantly commands respect. But she's not just a bruiser. She's an elite player on both ends of the floor. Last season, she averaged 17.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, and nearly 3 assists per game. That's top-tier production. And with her ability to stretch the floor, she's going to create even more space for Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston to thrive.
Hits a 3, Maisha Hines-Allen fouls her, and then tries to step over, and then Sophie Cunningham grabs her leg. Nobody's going near Maisha Hines-Allen, but no, Sophie Cunningham will start the fight. The refs are trying to break it up. None of the Mercury players are going to go near Maisha Hines-Allen. They're scared. She's scared of bejesus out of them. Maisha Hines-Allen is one of the toughest players in this league. Sophie Cunningham going head-to-head straight.
But defense is where Howard truly shines. She's been in the top 10 for Defensive Player of the Year voting 3 times and has averaged at least 1 block and 1 steal per game for 7 straight seasons. Last year, Clark dealt with defenders who thought they could rough her up without consequence. Now they'll have to think twice, and then there's Sophie Cunningham. If Clark needed someone to drain threes while keeping the bullies in check, she just got her. The Fever weren't just looking for skill this offseason, they needed toughness. And Cunningham?
Sophie Cunningham, there are so many things where it's like, part of it her fault, part of it not her fault, but she will not back down. She will not back down under any circumstances from anything. And that is what the Indiana Fever need. If somebody hits Caitlin Clark, if somebody does what Victoria Vivians did to Caitlin Clark, it's not going to be Caitlin Clark that's getting involved to be teed up. Sophie Cunningham's in there. You take the technical foul.
She brings both. Some thought she'd lure Clark to Phoenix, but instead, Clark made sure Cunningham joined her squad. This wasn't just a random signing. It was strategic. The Fever needed a player with attitude, energy, and relentless toughness, and Cunningham fits that mold perfectly. She's a sharpshooter, hitting nearly 38% from deep last season, and her ability to stretch the floor makes the Fever's offense even more dangerous. But beyond her shooting, Cunningham has an edge, a mean streak. She plays through contact, talks her talk, and backs it up. And here's a fun fact. She's a Taekwondo black belt. So for defenders thinking about getting too physical with Clark, they might want to reconsider.
Like Sophie Cunningham is guarding the screen here, and she just takes a hard hit. Nothing major. So she's down. And then after taking a hard hit, just gets back up and laughs.
Finally, we have DeWanna Bonner. She's not just joining the Fever to fill a roster spot, she's here to change the culture. With multiple WNBA championships, all-star appearances, and a reputation as one of the most versatile forwards in the league, Bonner brings the experience Indiana has been missing. Her leadership and championship mindset could be the missing piece that turns the Fever into a true contender. With Aaliyah Boston dominating the paint, Clark orchestrating the offense, Kelsey Mitchell draining shots, and Cunningham bringing the fire, Bonner's elite defense and clutch scoring are the final elements that complete this transformation. The Fever aren't just a young, promising team anymore.
She takes the hard hit and goes down, obviously, gets back up and just laughs. Like, that's a legitimate thing where you're like, okay, yeah, this is a person who is just, like, there is a toughness there with Sophie Cunningham. And, like, she's not scared.
They're a legitimate threat. Indiana has been knocking on the door of success, but what they lacked was experience. Someone who knows how to close out games under pressure and lead a team when the stakes are highest. That's what Bonner brings. She's already studying her teammates' tendencies, breaking down film, and figuring out how to elevate Clark, Boston, and Mitchell to the next level. This move isn't just about protecting Clark, it's about taking Indiana to the top. The Fever aren't just fighting back, they're ready to take over.